Open up the meeting if we're all set, and probably limited agenda tonight. It's the one application we're going to review is Planning Board 7-19, 8189 South Highland Avenue. So what I'll do is I'll basically open it up to the board first. We have an updated memo from Joe Tremelli, our consulting engineer. Asked him to kind of recap everything that's been done to this point. Specifically last month we went back and there were some concerns, I guess, about reviewing certain aspects of the application to make sure that things were all, basically 100%, the way they were presented to us, that, there wouldn't be something encroaching in the stream or that kind of thing. And, for kind of simple purposes, Joe basically confirmed that everything is pretty much as designed, appropriate with the application. There's a few points that Joe kind of mentioned to us now that I'd like to talk about as a board to get a better sense of which direction we want to go with those couple of points. And at that point, I would open up to the public. So, Joe, what were those 3 or 4 points?
Sure. So there were 3 items for consideration that were brought to your attention by the EAC. One was regarding the tree removal. The plan proposes 65 trees to be removed for the development of the site. They are proposing a planting plan, and at the request of the EAC, they've since revised that plan to include all native species, but something for the board to discuss, just whether or not that removal and the planting plan proposed to mitigate that is adequate for the site. Second one was regarding stormwater mitigation. One of the items that was raised by the EAC was consideration for stormwater mitigation for not only the subject property, but mitigation for existing off-site improvements, Walden Road specifically, and the existing building that was subject of the subdivision. Again, whether or not you think it's appropriate to have the applicant provide mitigation for other project areas. They have provided a design and a SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention plan, that we reviewed, and barring some very minor engineering tweaks that we don't see to be an issue, the mitigation for the site and development that's proposed is adequate. And finally would be the refuse collection. There was concern raised about who would provide the services, whether it be town or private carting. And I think as we explained at the last meeting, with multifamily development, commercial properties development, it's typically the policy of the village that garbage collection is done by a private hauler. The details of that collection, I don't think, have been, as of the last presentation, they weren't worked out yet, whether it was going to be a centralized location in a refuse enclosure or individual pickup at each of the 5 units. So there's something else that we should probably discuss with the applicant.
Okay. And if the applicant, I guess their team could come up and step to the podium, so if we have any questions as a board, that'd be very helpful. So I'd like to open up to the board and just, I guess, have a discussion about these various points.
Joe, there were some comments about wetlands from the EAC. The wetlands that are delineated on the those are not mapped wetlands by the DEC?
They're not state wetlands. We did verify the limits that are shown on the plan.
Okay.
We were out in the field, walked it, verified that the line that's shown on the plan is accurate. The wetland itself is not a locally regulated wetland. It's not a state wetland either. The village's wetland ordinance is pretty limited in that it just says, basically, if it's a state wetland, go do what the state wants you to do. Village of Ossip doesn't have, it's not a state wetland. There are 2 water courses on the property as well. Neither of those are DEC water courses either.
Okay.
So everything water course, wetland related, is all locally regulated.
And so what's proposed, the footprint and any other disturbance is not encroaching or impact, it's outside the boundary of what's been mapped and
It's all
confirmed as the
correct.
Boundary of the wetlands.
All the disturbance and the proposed improvements are beyond the limits of the wetland proper and the water course. There is no wetland ordinance here. Typically, the wetland ordinance is a buffer associated with it. State wetland has a 100-foot adjacent area. That doesn't come into play here because this village doesn't have that ordinance. and they're not state wetlands. So, as long as they're not in the wetland proper, and they're not in the stream, which they're not, we really have no comment.
Okay.
And I want to, this is Bobby Bowker speaking, I want to hear from the applicant, what is the plan for refuse collection and making sure that all the refuse goes in its proper containers and it's not strewn about the property? Like, what's our plan for that?
Good evening, my name's Anthony Guccione, I'm with JMC. Regarding the refuse and the garbage and trash, the plan was to, since these are more luxury townhome type of units and they will each have a garage, the idea was to have an oversized garage and carve out an area where they can have their refuse containers in the garage, and on pickup days, as Mr. Tremelli had mentioned, it would be private corridor, they would just put the cans out the night before pickup and then bring them in after they're emptied the next day.
Will they be in front of each individual unit, or is it going to be?
I'm happy to propose them in front of each individual unit.
Okay.
And it seems to make sense, right? It's a smaller project, limited to 5 units. I mean, something where there's 20, 30, 40 units, then they'd have a common garbage collection point, but this seems to be your kind of typical house. You bring out your trash like the rest of us do on a regular basis.
Right, a lot of times with a much larger development, we may have centralized locations for dumpsters and things like that, but for 5 units, it's not really warranted.
Perfect, thank you.
Joe, what, if you could kind of give us some thoughts on off-site stormwater improvements? You know, I'm thinking like maybe, you know, improving catch basins within the vicinity of where this is. Is that something that you would envision as off-site improvements
Yeah,
for stormwater? Or?
I don't want to speak for the EAC, but if I read some of the comments accurately, or their intent anyway, there was talk of stormwater runoff from, say, Walden Road and the surrounding areas getting into that stream that's on site. I think the impression I got was that they were hoping that the applicant would be doing some form of mitigation for that off-site runoff. That may be catch basins with deep sumps, could be other similar stormwater practices like are proposed for the site. But I don't know that we have the land available to do that type of practice. I think that area, that surrounding area immediate to the property is privately owned for the most part. I don't know if there's any village-owned parcels there. So to do that gets complicated. You end up with needing easements and access agreements and various property owners cooperating to allow those types of practices to be constructed to begin with. They don't have the room on their site to do that. The area that's being developed is really all that's left, you know, aside from the wetland and the water courses. So it's a good idea. I think it's more of a kind of a global solution. I think in this instance, it's difficult to accomplish.
I mean, it's kind of liking that to this whole issue with how to, you know, retard some traffic in the area. You know, there was an original thought about a speed bump, but, you know, maybe the best approach is let the police department kind of have a global look at the village and say, you know, really the issue's more for speeding or whatnot, or, you know, maybe a couple blocks away, that kind of thing. I mean, that's...
Right.
On that note, what was the resolution to the issue with the sight lines? I know at one point there was a discussion about, as opposed to traffic calming, improving the sight lines to, I don't know, if that was resolved?
We did, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, we had spoken about that quite a bit at the last meeting. We had reached out to the neighbor, and they were gonna allow us to trim and remove some of the trees on their property right along the right-of-way to increase the sight distance to an acceptable distance of 160 feet. We explained that this is a very low traffic generator. In the peak AM hour, there's only 2 cars exiting the site based on our study, based on typical calculations, and that's 1 car every half hour. So with the low volumes exiting the site, that was more than adequate sight distance in our opinion.
And will you be able to prevent that from growing back?
Put a note on the plans that say that'll be maintained in perpetuity.
Okay, and so this property will be the one to
Correct.
ensure that the sight line is maintained?
That's correct,
Okay.
absolutely.
If there's a sort of email from the adjoining property owner that...
Correct, granted
Maybe
us that.
Granted that, you know,
Permission.
maintain it in perpetuity, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Joe, back to the stormwater, it was deemed that the stormwater, the plan there is adequate for that site, right, whatever's there?
Yeah, the system that they've designed is adequate for their development. Like I said, we had some very minor comments that are, I think, easily addressed, but aside from that, yeah, it's adequate.
The stormwater from the all-new impervious surfaces is gonna be, my understanding is drained forward into like a catch basin system underneath the proposed driveway.
Right.
Is that-
Yeah, originally, all the parking surfaces and a large portion of the building was going to be collected and controlled in a subsurface detention system. And there was a small portion of the rear of the building that was going into a bioretention facility. And jump in whenever I'm speaking out of turn here, but since that plan has, it's been revised where now all the building runoff and all the impervious surfaces from the parking and the drives and walks are all gonna go into this detention system, subsurface system under the parking lot. And the bioretention basin has been removed, and that eliminates some of the disturbances that were proximate to the wetland.
Okay. So even like the gutters from the far side of the building, well, everything will be brought forward
Right.
into
Yeah,
that.
every drop of water that's gonna land on either the roof or the parking lot and driveways will go into this detention system.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Probably want to devote a little time to, I mean, I think the only thing left was plantings. I know we've got a schedule from the EAC of preferred plantings. My kind of feeling is these, whatever's disturbed or removed eventually will have new plantings and they will grow over time. I'm not sure if, you know, there's really a benefit to having the applicant put in, you know, 20-foot conifers or whatever to make up the viewing area, but I'll leave it up to the board if there's one, have some discussion about if we think that maybe some more mature trees could get planted there as a mitigating factor. You know, again, my thought is that eventually whatever's planted there over the course of so many years will grow in its place, and I think there is an intent to leave a lot of the mature trees there, you know, providing
Yeah.
screening and that sort of thing.
And I will say, from a practical standpoint, new plantings do better when they're a smaller size. They have a better chance to establish, and they'll grow better and probably quicker than if you were to, say, plant a 15-foot evergreen or 20-foot evergreen.
Okay.
You know, something on the 6 to 8 to 10-foot height at planting is preferred.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to go through the planting plan at all, just what,
To Mr. Tremelli's point, we planted substantial size. Most of the evergreens are 8 to 10 feet that we permitted because we wanted to have some immediate buffering at the edges of the property. As I stated before, there are 65 existing trees coming down. We've walked that, they're not in very good condition. Most of them are really telephone poles with some leaves at the top, because that's what happens in a wooded area. They shade themselves out and they don't do well. The lower branches will eventually die and fall off. Here we're planting high-quality nursery stock. The trees are 3 to 3.5 inch caliber. The deciduous trees, the evergreens are 8 to 10 feet in height, and they'll create an immediate effect, and they'll grow, and as you had mentioned, they'll eventually be, they'll do better than the trees that were there, and are basically in decline at this point. We did as was asked by the EAC, we made all the plants native. We did at the back, what we added, you had mentioned the bioretention. After the soils work came back, it was not going to support the bioretention in the back that we had previously hoped to do. So what we did was we added some facultative species of plants along the edge of the wetland buffer, which would kind of keep people from going towards the wetland.
If we could just pull up the landscape,
Sure.
that'd be
Which
helpful,
one
that
is
way the audience wants to see.
Oh my God.
Discuss the flowers.
Probably
C500?
C500.
This one?
Yeah, so if we go to the rear of the units there, you can see to the left. So you see that hatch? That hatch is a New England erosion control mix. in the back of the, the whole area is hatched behind the units, between the wetland buffer and where the back of the decks would be. And that's something that
Talking
could,
about this
yeah,
strip here?
exactly, that whole hatched area. That's a seed mix that puts down, it'll naturalize the area. It's got grasses in it, and it's got ornamental grasses, and it's got perennials in it that are just naturalize the area. And then we put some wetland and facultative type species along that too, some lindera, some trees, some red maple trees, other things that'll naturalize in there and create a nice kind of buffer to the buffer. Any stormwater that hits the ground and flows over land will flow through this planted buffer and get a little extra treatment before it goes in there, because the plants tend to uptake any nutrients and pollutants. But as was mentioned before, all the stormwater will collect from all the hard surfaces, the gutters, and be brought to the front of the property to go into that subsurface stormwater system. And prior to going into the subsurface stormwater system, it'll go through a hydrodynamic separator, which is a proprietary structure that eliminates any pollutants from the water. It's an approved measure by the DEC, and that'll help to further increase the water quality at the site.
We had questions kind of since the beginning of this about the turning radius for the fire truck.
Yeah, so if you
If
go
you
to,
could, C901, I think is
yeah,
the sheet
shows,
on that.
shows that analysis. It's on the bottom right there. Right, yep. This shows the fire truck. That is the Pasadena fire truck.
Now,
And then
this
it
the
shows
four-
circulation. So
This is a 47-foot truck, is that the large, the fire department
Mhm.
approved this
yes.
modeling based on this truck?
Yeah, when we had the meeting with them, we asked them what truck to model.
Okay.
That's what they had given us. So the truck can pull into the site, back into that space, and then back out. So the idea was that you weren't allowed to have a dead-end driveway over 150 feet, and by putting this driveway there, the turnaround, it makes it less than 150 feet. The neighbors found that acceptable. And that is a standard Appendix D from the New York State Fire Code K-turn configuration, with the size radii, the length of the turnaround, it meets all those, it's a hammerhead. It meets all those requirements, and then just on top of it, we did the truck circulation with the truck they showed us to show that it could get in and out of there. And that'll be the stabilized turf. Yeah, nothing else too exciting in there. Fire hydrants.
Try to find something.
Always like that.
Another point to discuss, I think, is recreation fees, being that there's not really any recreation on site here. We want to probably discuss that as part of the review process. Typically with something like this, if there's some recreation provided, we consider maybe some sort of a waiver or some kind of a softening of the requirement, but that doesn't seem to be the case here, so we need to kind of just discuss that amongst the board and get everybody's thoughts on it. It's on site.
$7,500 per unit, right? That would be provided to the Osmond Parks?
Well, here, there's no recreation fund.
Okay,
You know, separate account, I assume.
yeah.
I've never seen the bank
I
statement,
believe it's a trust fund.
but, okay. One of these days we'll get an accounting, I guess, of that. Because we collect a lot of rec fees over the years. So thoughts, comments?
I mean, it would seem like an
Appropriate, yeah. They don't have the space there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially every other project we've done in the last, umpteen years, as recent as Baker Properties and all these other things, we've, basically collected a rec fee, so that's kind of standard operating procedure. Okay.
To address that point, we do have the active recreation area that we're proposing. I think it's about 500 square feet. I don't know if that can come.
How big
in.
is it?
500 square feet.
Okay.
Per the
And that's a
calculation.
shared space for all
Correct.
the residents?
Correct. So I don't know if that can come into play.
It's shown on the layout plan, which
That's at
is,
the end of the driveway, there's a couple of, Jim, you go back to the landscape plan, I think it was shown on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
500,
yes.
My mouse is not.
a couple of tables and a,
the bottom of the driveway, if you can zoom in there.
I don't know if you can get it to work.
Yeah, just kind
I
of
can't
walk
get it
us
to
through
work
what
over
you guys
here.
envision that rec.
My
So
lap-
25
my
by
laptop
Can you
is
make-
interfering.
Zoom in a little bit.
Oh, your laptop's in the.
Yeah, it's causing the mouse to go wonky. Yeah,
Yeah, can you
guys
maybe
drag-
make the
make
open
it
there?
bigger, if you can get it up there. There you go. Now
Let's
it's
try
in there.
this again.
Yeah. So you got to work
Oh, there.
So. Come on, right here. So that's the recreation, that's the 500 feet outlined there, and there's two, picnic tables there shown for the residents with some landscape buffering around it. So the idea was to
25 by
meet,
20, that would be enough for probably 15, 20 people probably?
Yeah, I mean, we showed two picnic tables just to kind of give it the idea that it's a recreation area, but the idea was to meet the intent of the code with that calculation works out to 500 square feet, so that's what we showed that area.
Which aspect of the code?
About you're required to provide I don't remember the code section, you're required to provide active recreation, and there's a calculation based on the site size. That came out to 500 square feet.
I think the overall concept, I believe, of the rec fee is really to kind of help offset the impact of the existing parks and infrastructure we have in the village, so, that might require a little deeper dive. Just me personally, that's great to have rec for the residents, but if, all the folks up and down Walden can't make use of it or get a benefit, it's kind of like the pool at Hidden Cove. I mean, it's great, but, unless you have the key pass to the ninth floor, you're not getting the community benefit out of it. Just something to consider.
What does the code say we have to make as far as a finding and as to whether or not to apply a rec fee or not?
So, it's in your subdivision code section, and you have to, it says where deemed essential by the planning board and upon consideration of the particular type of development proposed in the subdivision, the board may require reservation and/or dedication in compliance with village law of land for the suitable development of a park or parks for playgrounds or recreational purposes. This is the section regarding on-site, park requirements. And the board shall not require more than 15% of the gross area of the subdivision be so dedicated or reserved. The minimum area of contiguous open space for dedication shall not be less than 2 acres. I don't think that applies. Open spaces of less area may be accepted whenever the board deems it advisable to accept such land in lieu of the following provision. And then there's language on the fee, and that says that in cases where the planning board finds that due to size, topography, or location of the subdivision, or for other reasons, land for parks, playgrounds, or other recreation purposes cannot be properly located therein, or is not otherwise practicable to require the same as a condition of approval, the planning board shall waive the requirement that such land be reserved and/or dedicated, provided that a cash payment in lieu thereof for each dwelling unit of a sum set from time to time, which the board has set in its schedule of fees for providing, be paid into a special village recreation account.
This sounds like this really is like a proposed amenity for the residents. But it doesn't seem like this addresses the intent
Right.
of that, so it seems like a rec fee would be an appropriate
Yeah,
addition.
and again, I think it's consistent with, a lot of the other projects we've over the last several years, just you're constrained by the site to really have any recreation open to the general public, so.
Yeah, and besides the fact that you can't access it as a private citizen, it's not an active recreation area, it's a passive recreation area for sitting.
Yeah, I don't think the intent of the applicant, maybe you guys can answer that, is would you welcome people from off-site to make use of this
I
facility?
don't think that's, no, I don't believe that's the intent.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions, before we open up to the public? Okay. So, I'd like to open this up to the public tonight. I'd ask that if you come up to speak, just again, name and address for the record. We would respectfully ask that whoever comes to speak, limit it to a few minutes. try to stay on subject, on topic, you know, specifically to what's being proposed within these 4 points. I'd also ask that if the person before you spoke about traffic or groundwater or this or that, that you don't necessarily repeat the same question. We've been at this for several months, and there's been a lot of opportunity to speak, but again, we're gonna open it up to everybody now, and if you can just follow those kind of requests, we greatly appreciate it. So, that said, if someone's here in the public, please step forward.
Shane Farrell, 78 Walden Road, property. So good evening, board. Good evening. So I want to just confirm that I know they just mentioned that we're going to cut for sight distance some trees in that triangle area that we allowed next door, correct? They were going to like flush cut some trees. Is that kind of what the understanding was? Right. Like 3 or 4 trees or whatever they think is. Okay. So actually, some of these trees are actually located within the wetlands. I've checked the site out. In the letter in the application to the zoning board dated September 5th, 2019, it was stated the proposed development will not encroach or disturb any wetlands or watercourses. Since this has now changed, I believe that the zoning board should be able to review this application. Since the zoning board used this letter and application as part of their decision-making and approval of the variance, the change of the application should be fully reviewed by the zoning board. Furthermore, our village code states that flush cutting trees is not allowed. It's against village code. And that any such changes to that code has to go through the zoning board. It states that in the village code 248-18, tree stumps shall not be removed, not flush. The property owner may appeal the tree stump removal requirement of the section to the zoning board of appeals. I had some concerns about that site distance still also. I mean, they did propose, December 17, 2019, they proposed a site distance within their plans. It was recommended 206 feet for desirables at their 31-mile-an-hour speed that they determined. All of a sudden now it's lower. They deem that now desirable. With that though, in consideration, the 206 feet, we're cutting those trees along the road line. They do not have that site distance. I have been to the site myself and have seen the site distance. Along that path that they have drawn on the site plan, there are trees, there are different vegetation. There's a telephone pole, a utility pole. There's an 8-foot fence. There's all sorts of vegetation. There's vegetation growing on that fence. That's all within the village of Briarcliff. At the December 17, 2019 meeting, the site distance illustration was provided. It showed that it was 206 linear feet that was needed. In that same meeting, it was discussed that trees and vegetation would have to be removed from Briarcliff Manor in order to get that site distance. Again, now all of a sudden it's changed. Again, those 3 trees would provide no site distance, appropriate site distance for that. The safety issue of the site distance is also a two-way street. It's meaning that not only for people leaving, it's for traffic coming through on both directions. They need to have adequate site distance of this driveway. It's in an unsafe location, placing a life safety issue. Placing a driveway entrance where site distance does not exist or it is limited will cause a safety issue and irresponsibility. All vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians should be afforded the right to travel safely within the village. Any plan that puts that into question should not be approved. Also, the site distance from the other side doesn't exist. I mean, there's a high grade that's outside of their property line. There's also telephone poles, there's trees, there's vegetation, and our cars always parked on the road, which would obstruct that view. And then we just brought up the emergency turnaround, another safety issue that I think is being overlooked. The turnaround at the beginning of a driveway makes no logical sense. That the whole point is for the truck not to have to back up the 160 feet to this turnaround. The requirement just requires emergency vehicles to back up a large distance in order to turn around, defeating the whole purpose. It only creates and delays the need, especially for an ambulance that needs to be can turn around fast and where seconds count and lives matter. Having a turnaround in the proper spot would provide for that. The vehicle could go all the way up to the end, be turned around and ready to go if needed. At the December 17, 2000 meeting, it was approximately 4 minutes in, it was stated by the developers, the turnaround was over the 150-foot mark. It was about what they said, 160 feet or so. So that means it's not the code. At the January meeting, the board stated they have a letter from the fire chief approving this turnaround and this code violation, which I can't find. I thought we were going to make that public. I would appreciate if we could make it public, or we can get a hold of it to see a signed letter from the fire department which approves such changes to the fire code and allowing a turnaround where it doesn't make sense. My last comment is I just have really great concern about the environmental impact, and I do request a full and in-depth study of the impact environment, wildlife, and any protected species, including trees and plants. There are all sorts of species in there, and I don't know what's there, but I do see salamanders, I do see frogs, I do see other things. Some of them could be on the protected list. It should be looked into. We asked for that since the beginning of the time. I addressed the steep slope concern where the driveway is. It's a steep slope with extensive erosion. We've already had steep slope issues in this village. We do not need one again, and we should take proactive approach to that. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So again, try and keep it to a few minutes. Again, address the board. We'll take in your comments, and the developer or the applicant will have an opportunity to speak to these points if we ask them to address them tonight.
Hi, Alexandra Farrell, 78 Walden Road. Thanks for your time. A couple of concerns. Again, the application made by Birchbrook Manor here in the proposal states that the townhouses propose a very low density residential use with minimal traffic. Again, I would ask, have traffic studies really been done here? Have the traffic studies been done independently to identify really what the traffic impact will be? I know there's a lot of discussions that 2 cars a day in the morning in the big traffic time. Where the proposed new lot is located, it's a high traffic area. We already discussed that. It's extremely dangerous traffic conditions for a residential area. The driveway is between 2 blind turns, limited sight distance, creating a life safety issue. We've gone through that. So has that traffic study or due diligence been done to make sure that this life safety issue is addressed properly? Again, the application states a low impact, high value residential development is intended to further the goal of improving the housing stock within the village. The village is overburdened with housing developments already. It's already creating extreme traffic conditions. It's created overcrowding in our schools. The application states there will not be significant environmental impact. What environmental studies have been done independently? Briarcliff has a setback on wetlands. I know we don't have the exact same in the village of Ossining, but this project encroaches on that. Have there been any discussions with Briarcliff? What are Briarcliff's thoughts on this part that borders that? I would also request a full environmental study, the impact to the environment, the wildlife, the waterways, any protected or potentially endangered species within the area. I think another area, the application from the get-go has stated a project location of 8189 South Highland Avenue. This proposed project is on Walden Road. We've requested several times in past meetings, both in the planning and the zoning board, that the application be amended to accurately reflect where this property is located. When people want to find information about what this development is doing or what the proposal is, they can't find it. It's confusing. It looks like it's South Highland Avenue. South Highland Avenue has a completely different character of neighborhood than Walden Road does. Birchbrook Manor, the apartments that are there already, that is on South Highland Avenue. The entrance is on South Highland Avenue. The new proposed lot is on Walden Road. It's surrounded by single-family and two-family homes. It's misleading to the public. I've spoken to a lot of residents who didn't understand where this project was, where it actually is, and it's misleading. I would request that the public hearing remains open and continues until this correction is made, and the public is given adequate time to really assess where this is and if it's right for the village. So in closing, I'm extremely concerned as a resident at the direction the village is going and the continued overdevelopment and overcrowding that it's causing. I think, this is a smaller project, but lots of small projects equal a lot of development in an already overdeveloped village. I love Ossining, I love living here, I know all of us do, but it seems as though we're placing some preference on potential tax revenue or other revenues that I don't even know about at the expense of our existing residents' quality of life, and maintaining what's best for the village that we love. So I would really ask that you consider the points that are brought up today and really further research if this development is truly in the best interest of the village and its residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Honorable Chairman Beldati and Village of Ossining Planning Board. My name is Roger Bhattacharya. I live at 16 Holbrook Road in the village of Briarcliff Manor. I live right up the street from this development. I came here today to oppose the development of the 5 townhouse buildings on Walden Road being proposed by Birchbrook. This concept from inception was ill-conceived. The proposed buildings are a 1-acre parcel that is within 14 feet of wetlands that feed into Sparta Brook. Think about that, 14 feet. The village of Briarcliff Manor requires 50-foot buffer zones from wetlands, but Birchbrook Properties attorneys told the village of Briarcliff Manor that it's not their business because they were not building in Briarcliff Manor. So that was a nice ruse from them, just to dodge a village inspection. The town of Ossining requires a 100-foot buffer from wetlands. Notice that there is a town and a village that both have buffers, but this village does not. This makes it easy for you. You, the Birchbrook Properties, to push through your variances and subdivisions through the Zoning Board of Appeals without any inspection of the property. How convenient is that? This also keeps the village away from seeing the amount of garbage and refuse and oil contamination of your existing property that's dumped into the wetlands, and it continues to do so to this day. To sum it up, you, Birchbrook Properties, have continued to create the quintessential wasteland of what you've already created. Let's talk about your development here. It's clear that your intent is to forsake our natural wetlands to maximize your profits without regards to the environment, the neighborhood, or the concerns of the citizens. You laid out your plans perfectly for the village residents to see how your 5 townhouse units will create impervious surfaces that adversely impact the ecosystem and the surrounding area, as well as take out 65 trees. For those listening in this audience and for those watching on TV, 65 trees takes out 650 tons of CO2 emissions. While it's a drop in the ocean overall, it is an irresponsible move in a world where our planet is dying a slow death from climate change. How have you had the heart to change our community just to line your pockets with more cash? I turn to you, Honorable Chairman.
So I'm going to ask you just to kind of refrain from some of the, it sounds like, accusatory about profit and this and that. I mean, again, if it's germane to what's in these 4 points.
You asked for public comments and given me public comments. I turn to you, Honorable Chairman Beldati, and the members of the Planning Board to put a pause on this project until there is a full environmental impact assessment study done. Let it be on your watch and your responsibility to ensure that you act as stewards and public servants for the people and by the people of our community. This is your moment to showcase how much you protect and defend our community and our natural environment. The Village of Ossining Planning Board needs to know that we have over 200 signatures on a petition demanding that Birchbrook Properties cease building on this property as it is wetlands and clean up the environment, which they have made a wasteland. And I have this here to submit to you. The people of the village and town of Ossining and Briarcliff are watching and are hopeful that you will side with the residents. Thank you for listening, and I'm willing to submit this if you at convenience.
Thank you. You can leave with the
Jamie,
work.
do you want to?
Good evening, Honorable Chairman, Planning Board, Aaron Spring. Just want to make it clear I speak for myself, and I do not speak for the Ossining School District nor the Board of Education of Ossining. Just want to address a couple of things here. One is what Roger said about 65 trees being cut down, 650 tons of CO2 a year that is emitted. And if they're going to plant these new trees, especially these younger trees, it doesn't take in as much CO2 and release as much oxygen as these older trees would. So we really have to look at the environmental impact there. We also need to note that the developers used the Rutgers model to account for how many school children are going to be in the district. We all know that the school district is overcrowded and underfunded, and the Rutgers model has failed us time and time again. If you look at the Avalon project, the Rutgers model was used to project that there would be 16 kids at Avalon Complex. It ended up being 28, which is a 50% increase, more than 50% increase. If you look at the Harbor Square development, I believe it was 9 projected kids, and it ended up being 16 or 17 in this past coming school year. So what does this tell you? The Rutgers model has not worked for the last 2 big developments in Ossining. I don't have the facts on the other developments, but I advise you to look into it. With this Rutgers model, I believe they said it was 1 or 2 kids that'll come out of this. My personal belief is with 5 townhouses, you're gonna have at least 5 kids. And it's just not right to put kids into a district where they're not gonna get the resources, again, that they're constitutionally entitled to. Education is a right. If you're building these houses where these kids are gonna go into this district and they're not gonna get the education that they're constitutionally entitled to, we're doing a disservice to them. And as I believe Ms. Farrell said, we're sick of the overdevelopment, quite frankly. The people are sick of it. The traffic is ridiculous. I mean, 9 a in the morning, look out at it. It takes 20 minutes to go from this light all the way down to North State Road. It's just ridiculous. If we wanted to live in Yonkers or New Rochelle or Mount Vernon or the city, we would live there. We want to live in Ossining because of its suburban setting, because it didn't have development until recently. So we just ask that you work for us, the people, the many, and not the few, and truly remember why you're appointed to this board. Again, I know you guys care about this village, otherwise you wouldn't be volunteering your time on a Tuesday night. Plenty of other things you could be doing, so we appreciate your service, but please listen to the many and not the few. Thank you.
Anyone else that hasn't had an opportunity to speak to the application?
Okay. Honorable Chairman Beldati and the Village of Ossining Planning Board. My name is Anthony Santidis, and I live at 8 Macy Road. I came here today to oppose the development of the 5 townhouse buildings on Walden Road being proposed by Birchbrook Properties. This concept, from its inception, was ill-conceived. The proposed buildings are on 1 acre parcel that is within 14 feet of wetlands that feed into Sparta Brook. This development, if built, will create significant impervious surfaces, creating more stormwater flooding into a fragile ecosystem. Birchbrook developers have not been good neighbors. Their existing property, which backs up on the other side of the wetlands, is not well maintained. They have allowed for the dumping of tires and other refuse into parts of the wetlands. Further, they have shown through their existing development that they have not been responsible with the environment. Their property does not stop oil slicks and other toxic materials from flowing from their existing properties into the wetlands. They have allowed so much pollution in the wetlands that it has clogged the existing pass-through channels. If you allow them to build, it will not only destroy 65 trees, but adversely affect the ecosystem downstream in the Sparta ravine, which flows down the Hudson River. We cannot allow this to happen. As a resident and homeowner, I urge you to allow a full environmental study and lay out the facts for the residents so they can see how reckless this development is to our community. You must forgive me, I'm camera shy, but I am the owner of 8 Macy Road. My house, which my daughter, we help my daughter, put the house for them, and the grandchildren are there. Our driveway is exactly opposite this development. I don't understand how all the vehicles from all these townhouses are going to enter and exit the property, which is right across from our driveway. This doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know, they could have chosen another location, but in my opinion, it's completely wrong location to build these townhouses. Basically the traffic, the environment, and I strongly oppose it. I saw that they already started cutting trees, And it's very close to, right across from our driveway there. So I don't see how this should go on. I strongly oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Baldati and the Village Planning Board. My name is Rich Costabile of 8 Ridgewood Avenue. Obviously, I'm concerned about the streams and wildlife, but that's been taken care of. I'm concerned about the schools with the overcrowding. I'm concerned about the view lines, which have already been discussed. But I'm also concerned about where's the visitor parking? Because I don't see visitor parking anywhere there. In a visitor's park where the fire truck's supposed to turn around, or the garbage truck's supposed to turn around, I find that strange. Or they'll park on Walden Road. I don't know where visitors. So, as a resident, I urge you to allow a full environmental study and to review even the parking for visitors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for also not repeating every previous comments. Anyone else?
Hi. Martin Farrell, 58 Ferris Place. Just one question. Last meeting, they said there was a letter from the fire department, and it was gonna be brought, I thought, to this meeting. Did anybody check on that, and if there was a letter?
My understanding is the chief signed off on it. I don't know if that winds up in some sort of a letter format, or if it's a signature on an internal memo. Joe, Amanda, maybe you guys could speak
I
to
don't know that a
that.
letter's been provided. Historically, the fire department does not put their approvals in writing. We have had staff level meetings with the fire department, the chief present, and they've worked out the details of that plan, and the plan that you see before you is what he's agreed to at a meeting. I don't think we'll get anything from them in writing, they just don't do it.
Because last meeting, they said they had a letter. That was the only thing, that's why I said.
And to add to Joe's comments, in all the years I've sat here, I don't think our consulting engineer attorney would let us go forward if a chief raised objection to this type of parking or this type of radius issue. So, I mean, me personally, I feel our consultants have done what they've needed to do to verify that, this is a safe plan. Just my opinion.
So how does the public just know, does he sign off on something, or it's just?
No, I think just as Mr. Baldati
Just
said,
whatever's worded?
there's a meeting and you have, our word as a professional engineer, an attorney, to say that we met and it was agreed that that was the approved layout. It's important to note too that turnaround area, keep in mind that he's backing out after the events happened and after the emergency's been taken care of. And it's there so that he doesn't have to back into a public street. He can actually pull out head first. So, it's not that he's gonna pull in, turn around, maneuver, use that to get to the emergency. He's gonna pull into the driveway, set up his rig, fight the fire, and then use it to back out.
I mean, again, all the years I've sat here, I think our intent has always been to make it safer for the fire department to get in there, set up right away, and do what they need to do to prevent, damage, life, safety issues. I mean, that's the whole point here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, just to clarify, I wasn't at the meeting, Stuart Kahan was at the meeting, and that's my understanding too of how the fire department handles these matters and how it was handled in this matter.
And I think that's an important point too, to add to the reason why we wanted one final recap memo on everything, because there has been some transition. We have new counsel now. Stuart, Kahan, who's been our counsel for, several years here, has transitioned. He's relinquished his, responsible for attending this meeting. So, we wanted to be consistent and make sure that all, everything was, all Ts were crossed and Is were dotted, and I think, this memo's done that, so. Anyone else from the public?
Chairman Baldati.
Thank you for having me. Good evening. So, I know that the Village of Ossining does not have a policy on any wetlands at this point, is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'd like to ask that this...
Well, let me refrain.
Okay.
Well, let Jill speak.
There is a wetland ordinance. Okay. But it directs, it speaks specifically to the state wetland.
So
And state wetland mapping and wetlands and water courses regulated by the DEC, which the wetlands and water courses on this site are not.
Correct. It's more than the state
Right.
mandate. So I would like to ask this board if they would consider to suspend this project until we can come up with policy that works for all future building, and not come up with a policy that works after we shoehorn 15,000 square feet into a piece of property that probably shouldn't have it. They're gonna build on just about every inch of this property. We can all agree on that. There are several homes. Many of my neighbors are here. When it rains hard, their house is at grade, and they get flooded out. I mean, there's 6 homes that suffer from this, and they deal with it. So, one other thing is, I've had a few conversations with both Briarcliff officials and Ossining officials, or workers, we could say. And they both have concerns about the sewer system. The sewer system in this village is well into 100 years old. In most places, it's probably past that. So I believe that that should be one of, it should be something that is necessary to look out prior to moving forward with this. So one other thing which is going to be regarding to maintenance. So is there a policy in regards to this new hammerhead policy and who's going to maintain it, when it's going to be maintained? And then the other side to that is the fire hydrant at the end of the property, who is going to maintain that? Because what we have found in the past is we had a fire at 117, 119 South Highland Avenue last year. That is not this project. And it is a private water main, so they maintain their own sewers, hot fire hydrants. So unless the water department maintains that fire hydrant, the Village of Ossining Water Department maintains that fire hydrant, you can be guaranteed that more than likely it's going to be full with sediment, and it's going to also freeze in the winter. Because where this fire hydrant is going to be located is also a very wet place. So the shoe of the fire hydrant will not drain properly. So that also is a significant concern. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. So that's a good point. I think we'll discuss that one.
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick. With regard to the water and sewer, it's expected that they're both extensions to the public main, so have to be reviewed and approved by the county health department. They would both be put into an easement that the village would have access to for maintenance of both. The individual services for water and sewer that would come off of those mains would be the responsibility of the property owners.
Okay.
But the mains themselves would be extensions of the public main.
Okay.
And maintained by the village.
Okay.
And with regard to, the hydrant location, again, that was agreed to with the fire department at that same meeting when we discussed the turnaround.
So the fire department would agree to that as opposed to the water department who maintains it?
Well,
Because I can tell you, once a fire
the fire
hydrant,
department, they're using it for emergency services, so the priority is where do you want the hydrant, and then who's gonna maintain it. So,
And if it is dedicated to the village, it'll fall to the program where the village will go out and flush it biannually,
exactly.
spring, fall, which is typical of what we
so
also-
that is not true. The village water department does not flush hydrants in a private property. That is my understanding.
That's why there'd be an easement over this. It grants that access.
So, I'll disagree with that. I don't believe that to be accurate.
Right. We'll take it under advisement. I mean, it's not
So the
something
one
that's
other thing
at
is,
this point.
the gentleman behind me decided last meeting to say that we do not need the biggest fire truck to come to this property. That is in fact the farthest from the truth. And actually, in shortening the driveway, it actually creates an issue with if the ladder could touch the top of that building. So what happens is, if you get an engine in ahead because they see the fire hydrant, so now I have 30 feet. This fire truck is 47 feet. You can't park right on its bumper. So now we're at 77 feet. The fire truck ladder is only 100 feet, both of them. So that's saying that the truck could get right close. So there is a significant life safety issue by them shortening the driveway. The ladder truck can't get in there. So and that's all I have for tonight. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir, what was your name?
James Stroman.
Thank you.
All right, I think everybody from the public's had an opportunity to speak to this. I think I'd like the applicant to come back up. So I have one or two questions, and if the board has any
Anyone,
questions.
just make sure anyone else.
Okay. All right, so if the applicant can just come back up and make themselves available, maybe to comment on, I mean, I know there was a plethora of comments there.
Yes.
Keep it concise. I know some of the things were, redundant, but that's fine. I mean, we want to give everybody an opportunity to speak out. So you can kind of run us through some of, your thoughts on some of those comments, and then again, I think the board may have a question or two here for clarification.
Sure. And I will likely defer to my engineers for most of the comments because they have more specific knowledge of those things. I would like to address one of the comments regarding the notices and the address. The address of the property is 8189 Island. That's how it's been noticed. That's the appropriate way to do it. Each notice, as well as each agenda, has also indicated that this site is proposing no access to Olden Road. So we're not hiding the fact that we're proposing new access to and from Olden Road. It's just want to clear that up.
Right, there's no connection between the existing apartment complex and what's going to be developed here.
Correct.
And unfortunately, the post office hasn't assigned
Correct. Once we
a legal street address to this location yet. It's a
Not
problem we
until
have with
after.
other projects as well.
Well, the lot hasn't been officially created yet either.
Correct.
So once the plat has to be filed to create the lot. Once that's done,
Then there's-
coordination between Village Emergency Services and the post office will agree on a street address that works for all of them. And it will be likely some number on either Holbrook or Walden.
visitor parking, I believe we're providing, I think is it 8 above what's required?
additional.
4. So we're providing a surplus of 4 parking spaces to accommodate any sort of guests.
When you say what's the total, yeah, maybe you could walk through.
Yeah.
Cause I know every unit has a, is it a 2-car garage, or some of them have a 2, some of them have a 1?
Might be, we have a render plan that might be a little more legible, if you want to put that up.
Sure. That helps answer the question.
I don't know if this is a little easier to see than the black and white. But as we're saying, the parking required for there's 2 spaces required per unit, that's 10 spaces for the 5 units. There are 14 spaces proposed. There's driveways, so there'd be 2, 4, 6, 7, and then there's garages inside of each of these that replicate the driveway. So each 2-car driveway has a 2-car garage.
Okay. But when you count the spaces in the garage, those aren't counting towards the spaces required. Or they?
Yeah,
They are, yeah.
They are.
So,
We have 14 spaces provided.
all right, so like a unit with
And 10 required.
a unit with a 2-car garage.
Would have 4 spaces.
4 spaces, 2 in the garage and 2 outside.
With a 1-car garage, they have 1 in and 1 out.
Now, there was a question about, if there's an emergency, fire truck access on the side of the driveway opposite the units. Is there any parking?
No.
Do we have notes on the site plan for signage
We'd be
to,
happy to add no parking signage, no standing signs,
Yeah.
a couple of them along.
whatever
there
the
to make
appropriate
sure.
signage would
Yeah.
be to indicate that that's
That
always
was a
clear?
discussion with the fire department, and we had made it clear that we were not intending to park there, they have to park on their driveways.
So really the intent is if it's a visitor for one of those 5 units, they're going to park in the driveway for that particular unit.
Correct.
I mean, I don't know if we need to have signage in front of each unit saying.
No, I'm talking, not talking in front of each unit, I'm saying.
On the other side, yeah, like a no parking.
Be on the curb line here,
That's
yeah.
fine, that's fine. I'm just, from a granular standpoint,
Right.
somebody pulls in there, they're gonna go see their friend in unit 3,
Exactly,
right in the
yeah.
driveway.
Yeah, it's a 5-town, this is not, like sometimes we'll do 50, 100, 200 unit development, and you have different requirements, no parking areas, you have different zones like that, but for a smaller, modest development like this is pretty standard.
I have a question. This is just maybe even a little more theoretical, but it goes to some of the questions about whether the scale of what you're proposing here is appropriate in terms of blending into the neighborhood. And this is zoned MF1, which I believe there's no cap on the number of units you can put there, except that they have to meet the minimum unit size. You're proposing, and this kind of goes back to the way this project was pitched to the board and sort of some of the initial presentations. This was targeted as sort of meeting a niche in the market for empty nesters where there's going to be a master bedroom on the ground floor.
Right.
Each of the units, I guess they average out to something like 3,000 square feet because what you're proposing is something like 15,000 square
The
feet.
two larger ones do, the center three are 2,280 square feet, something like that.
Right, and so, but it works out to like 15,000 square feet over averaged across these 5 units. But in an MF zone, theoretically, you could have come in with a project that was maybe 1-bedroom units, 1,000 square feet. I think you could go down to 600 square foot.
Yeah, the FAR ratio, I think, is like 600.
Right.
minimum.
I mean, so like, even if you had come in on this sort of project, the same amount of interior living space, 15,000 square feet, you could have proposed 15 one-bedroom units. You could have even gone smaller. You could have been like a
600 or 25 units.
25 unit project. So and just so that in terms of the comments about the scale and appropriateness up to the neighborhood, this project came in pitched as on the low end of the number of units that the MF1 zone would permit as of right.
Right, yeah, we wanted to be more in keeping with this side of the property as opposed to the other side, which is clearly apartment buildings. This is a different product. The applicant believed that, really the empty nester was kind of the target market here. Higher, nicer units, larger units, higher finishes, and that was the idea coming in. So you're right, the unit count could have been much higher and still met the bulk requirements that we met, but we did meet all the bulk requirements in terms of setbacks, coverage, unit size, number of size that's laid out in the zoning.
And if I'm not mistaken, the properties immediately to the north are Zone T, so that's a 2-family zone.
Sounds right.
I think we have
Yeah,
the,
T zone.
Jamie, do you have the zoning map, just so we could?
Pretty much all Maurice and all of that.
It's T and then it's S75 further as you go west.
And then that MF2 right here, this is the project, this is the site here, but that's an apartment complex?
That is, yeah.
And does that have an entrance? That has an entrance off of Walden as well, I believe.
John?
That's one of them.
For the apartment building to the north? Pardon? There's an entrance off of Baldwin for the apartment building to the north?
It does.
I can't recall the last time I was up there.
There's an exit on Walden, that's the main entrance, and I believe there's also an emergency exit on
Or
Lincoln
Lincoln?
Place.
Okay.
That's it, yeah.
See, a lot of these things, again, historical perspective here.
That's the block north of this, where this is proposed.
Like a lot of these existing apartment complexes might have been non-conforming, they might have been an apartment complex built in a T-zone or an S75 or whatever many years ago, maybe before there was a zoning code or, zoning map. So I think in the last comp plan, a lot of those sites where there was, dense multifamily, it was converted to a multifamily zone in F1 and F2, wherever it was.
Okay. There was also comments about the trees that you would have to cut to create the site distance.
Right.
Is the proposal to just trim those trees, or
Well, the truth is, there's a couple of trees that are on the edges of the water course that are in really poor condition. They're basically dead, or they're trunks, there's nothing to them. And the trees that have been taken down are been hacked by the utility companies because they're running into the utility wires. So we're not planning on going past the utility pole to the south, just up to the utility pole. There's a guardrail there, there's a cheek wall for the culvert for the stream, and we're gonna go in there and just take a couple of those trees that are really poor condition and cut them down low so that, we didn't want to disturb anything with the wetland area, just cut the tree off with the permission of the neighbor and increase the site distance. That was the proposal there.
And Jeff, the flush cutting of some of those trees was actually a recommendation from us to provide a means to stabilize the banks of the adjacent area to the water courses. The reference to the flush cutting of trees is actually in a separate section of the code that talks about restoration areas and non-permitted tree removal. They're obviously here as part of their site plan approval and subdivision to get approval for the removal of trees. So
Okay.
I don't think that comment applies to this. Obviously, I would defer to the board, but my recommendation would be in those instances, those few trees, to just flush cut and leave the stumps. It's a natural protection for the slope.
Okay.
Right, if they rip these stumps out, basically they'll have more runoff and erosion, and that makes sense, makes sense to leave them.
Yes.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think with that, we'll close the public hearing, comment. First order of business is to make secret determination, so I'll let Amanda speak to, what's involved with that. I believe we also need to discuss subdivision approval, which is basically creating a separate lot, and then site plan and whatever else needs to be discussed.
Right, so, the planning board declared itself lead agency for purposes of SECRA early on in this process before I was involved. I think probably at your first or second meeting you did that. So at this point, you have a Part 1 environmental assessment form from the applicant, which goes through, some of the basic environmental issues associated with the application, and that is the information that would be used to fill out Part 2, the impact assessment, which I've done as the preparer on the form, and I can pass that out for you all to take a look at, if you like.
And typically, as a matter of just kind of board procedure, we've made secret determination, and then usually winds up in the final resolution as part of it, I believe.
Right.
Stuart in the past, and even Mark and some of the attorneys before that have always kind of consolidated all to the resolutions. But I think there were some questions earlier in the week with Amanda. The discussion was, my thought was that you would consolidate everything in the final resolution.
Right.
In terms of secret approval.
Yeah, what you'd be doing tonight is simply making a motion to issue the Part 2 and the Part 3, and then approving, and if you do that, based on the information in the Part 2 and Part 3, that would lead you to make a negative declaration, and so then you would, move to make a negative declaration. That negative declaration would be kind of further fleshed out in your approval resolution for this matter. And then we move forward with subdivision approval, site plan approval, and that's that.
Okay. So give everybody an opportunity to just kind of scan this two-page document, I guess, right?
That's no across the board.
That's based on, the changes that have been made throughout the public
Yep.
hearing process. The applicant's been, able to make changes, SWIP's been provided, Calhoun Sessions has, reviewed.
I have a question about the SWIP. There wasn't originally no SWIP required, and then we got one. Or was a SWIP required from the outset?
We had required one from the onset.
Oh, okay, because there was another stormwater plan that we got that was not.
Another project site?
No, for this, it was,
A drainage report, or?
We had first done just a shorter stormwater management report to get your feedback.
Okay, that's what that was.
It was more preliminary.
Preliminary analysis and
then we got
initial plan.
Okay.
And then.
Yeah. And I know, Joe, there's been at least 4 memos from your office with regard to this project, at least 4, right?
Sounds right.
Initial.
I don't know exactly, but
Yeah.
there's been several
Yeah.
iterations
Yes.
of reviews and plan changes as a result.
So if you'd like to discuss anything on the Part 2, or if you're ready to move on it, then. that's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Again, anyone any comments or? Okay. So with that said, I call for a motion, I guess, to make the determination as Amanda basically stated, you know, to move on the secret process. Negative deck, and go from there.
Can we do the motion on the parts, approving the parts 2 and 3 first?
Okay, so we'll do that?
Yeah.
So we'll do, as Amanda stated, we'll call for a motion to approve parts 2 and 3.
I'll move.
Okay, Jeff, and can we have a second?
I'll second.
Bobby, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, motion carried. Is there anything else with the secret determination at this point?
And
or-
then you would adopt a negative declaration.
Okay. So with that said, with approval of the second and third parts of the application, we need to call for a motion to approve a negative declaration. So call for a motion.
I'll move.
Jeff, have a second?
A second.
Eric? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, okay. So then, with that said, I guess the next issue is subdivision approval, creating a separate lot. So is there any specific language that you want to have?
Well, just as a note, this is their preliminary subdivision approval,
Okay.
so I would include that in your motion.
Okay. So call for a motion making, doing preliminary approval. I believe we can put conditions on the site plan, because that's the next thing that we've discussed. Okay, so with that said, this would be the preliminary subdivision approval.
Motion to approve a preliminary subdivision.
Bobby, okay, great, and get a second?
Second.
Seth, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that brings us to site plan approval. I know in Joe's memo, there are some issues that still need to get resolved. I would assume those are being incorporated into any kind of a preliminary site plan approval.
Yeah, that's typical. We'll, it's not uncommon that we'll have some minor items to work through yet, so we'll just condition the approval to the satisfaction of those comments, as well as there's other boilerplate conditions that go into the resolution.
Okay.
I had the comment about the no parking signs
Yes.
opposite. That would go on the site plan?
Putting that as a condition to the site plan approval.
Okay. And then the rec fees are also.
Rec fees, I think the other thing we discussed, that would be part of the approval.
Right.
We call for the rec fees on the 5 units.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, we're not getting any affordable here, I think it's all market rate. Okay. Okay. So I would need a motion to move on, there's preliminary site plan approval with conditions that were just discussed, and any other conditions Joe or our legal Amanda would have with regard to legal, engineering, that, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, there are minor open issues with engineering that they would work out with Kelly and Sessions.
Okay, so call for a motion.
Motion to approve site plan with conditions?
Okay. Bobby?
Second the motion.
Eric? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. All right, and I think that's pretty much it now, because really the next part of this is going to be BAR review. Any update from the applicant?
Happy to share what's been submitted.
Can we handle that tonight with all that transpired?
Yeah, that's at your discretion.
People a moment? Okay, so let's go.
Jamie, I'm not sure if these are in that bundle that can be shared on the screen,
I have no idea. You have
because I can't read the screen sadly.
to construction, I can't read the screen. What number is on the site?
SK2, but it may not be up there, but
Those are all the civil, looks like.
it may be in a separate
C is civil.
file.
That's all I have.
Okay.
I think the only thing we've really seen so far is a rendering, right?
Yeah.
You have seen this collection of drawings, and they've been submitted in various packages along the way. There have been very minor alterations from the initial concepts that were shared from the informal review until today. The most significant element has been vertical elevation changes of the way the units step that have corresponded with the site plan development in terms of grading. We had modified this end architectural element, but other than that, the low profile, stepping down with grade, cottage style architectural vocabulary has been consistent from the beginning. As you recall, we've talked about the two-story aspect from the parking and entry side. As the topography stepped back to the west, the building also essentially stepped down, and that notion volumetrically contributed two elements. When you get to the westerly side, or the downhill side, you still primarily realize a two-story structure with larger dormers for the second floor. The other element this provides us, and you can see these areas hatched out and identified here, are significant plan areas for solar panel installations, which are not evident on the street side. They're concealed on the westerly and the southerly exposure. Part and parcel to some of the route beyond the architectural vocabulary. Part and parcel, this low-pitched volume toward the west was also to accommodate a much better solar exposure. The palette is very simple. We've shared these sets of images, which you can see. The architectural elements are reflected on the renderings. It's white siding, board and batten, black windows. It's a charcoal roof. There are elements of black doors, and the railing is a metal with a wood cap, black metal. Very simple.
Siding, we're talking a masonry?
It's a Hardy product. It's a standard pre-finished Hardy vertical board and batten siding. This is actually from a Hardy brochure. So I have samples of the white, but it's white.
6-inch exposure and 8-inch exposure?
The batten distance depending on where it is on which elevation. The batten distance is about 10 inches on the entry side, and the batten distance on the lower side is about 14 inches below the decks. Battens are 1.5 inches by 1 inch. They have a fairly hardy profile that provides the vertical shadow on it. I mean, it's a nice system. It's a very durable system. It's pre-finished.
And this is stick-built, right? You guys aren't doing modular?
Stick-built. Well, it's set up as a modular, but it can be stick-built. And so I'm not sure where we're going to land on whether it's modular or stick-built, but the original bay system is set up for 13 feet 9 inches. So it could be built as modular.
Okay. Comments? Observations? I mean, it looks essentially the same as what you proposed.
It's been
back
very
in May
consistent.
or June or whatever that was.
Yep.
Chimney? I don't see chimneys there. Is it direct vent?
And fireplaces are going to be gas fireplaces with direct vents.
What about cooling units, condensers, where are those going?
The condenser units will go in these areas
That's the
on
backside?
the westerly side below the deck.
Okay.
And the central units will probably, the three center units will have a single two-stage condenser.
What are you doing for heat? Gas, oil?
I'm anticipating it to be gas, but until we really know what the service
Still a moratorium, right?
of it,
Yes.
right, until we know what the service availability is, that may, it won't be oil, let's
So
put
no
it that way.
electric with split units?
That's,
No electric basement?
that is surged ahead,
Okay.
since the moratorium,
I know
or the
Vermont
challenges
are
to.
doing that now.
Just a curiosity question. If you went with propane, could you switch back to natural gas at some later point if it was made available?
You can, and people are making those accommodations. The challenge is providing a large enough propane tank
Where do you put
footprint.
it?
What's the deck material in the back?
The horizontal surface, the trim pieces are all hardy, all right, a pre-finished hardy material. The horizontal surface is like a track.
So it's a solid rail?
No. It's a metal and wood railing system.
Oh, okay, that's the deck railing.
Right.
Okay.
So you haven't really done floor plans yet, I guess?
Yeah, we have actually. I don't have them here.
Yeah, look, I mean.
We had them at
That's-
previous meetings.
right, that's-
That's
yeah,
sort
next
of-
month.
We haven't,
Do we? Do you want to
Yeah,
look?
It's gonna be on.
Yeah, this will carry this over to next month, obviously.
Well, I mean, you touched on the notion that these units have first floor bedrooms, right? That was one of the market driving niche components. So, and they're wider, to circle back to one of Jeff's observations. This could have easily, this length of building in a more prototypical townhome bay configuration would have easily yielded 8 units, maybe 9 across. So these are very horizontal and spread out as 5. And the other notion was that we were trying, and I think we achieved it, to generate as much first floor area, not only lending itself to the bedroom scenario, but so we weren't having to create so much volume on the westerly side, on the second floor.
Have we figured out if we're gonna lease them, rent them, lease them, or we're gonna?
I think the
For
answer
sale?
is no,
For sale?
we haven't figured, but I don't want to speak on that.
No, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I think at some point, once the subdivision plat, map, whatever comes back, you'd have to make a determination. I think, we'd want to have that incorporated into a final resolution. So that would be kind of a site plan condition that's still kind of open, hanging out there. I don't even answer, I just know. Take that as a
Who the question was for.
comment from the chair.
It was a statement.
Yeah.
Anyone else, questions, comments, observations about the architecture?
How's air conditioning handled?
It's going to be it may be either a split system of cassette units within the unit, or a more prototypical central air conditioning with multi-stage condensers at the rear. We certainly haven't vetted that to a high degree.
So there may be exterior compartment.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely going to be condensers along the back, under the deck, all right. And we have enough vertical clearance to allow that requirement for vertical clearance for performance.
Do you believe they would be mounted onto the facade of the units on the back, or they would be mounted onto the?
The condenser units will be ground install that, right? Like a traditional on a pad, and then everything else is concealed on the interior, right? There's no like P-TAC unit that has a louver signature on the wall or air conditioning unit.
I guess there's no other comments, we would adjourn it till you guys can bring back some samples next month and.
I have some samples.
Okay.
It's white siding, shall I?
Is it smooth or grainy?
Yeah, it's, well, let me confirm for you.
While we wait for those samples, I don't think, just to jump ahead a little bit, Sing Sing Prison Museum was adjourned. We're still waiting for a response from, I guess, Jerry, and he's working some issues out with Stuart.
Yeah, issues out with Stuart.
Oh, you got that shade of white?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I mean, these are fairly high resolution, although they don't appear like it here, of the actual timberline shingle, the charcoal shingle. It's, you know, a range of black.
I mean, this is what's in right now, the white and the black casings, you said all the time. What about the garage doors, black, white?
Yeah, black is what we're anticipating, along with the entry doors.
Black gutters?
Black gutters.
Rounded?
Pardon?
Rounded gutters?
Ooh, half round. Should that be the inclination of this board, I'm
Yeah,
happy
really
to
good round,
specify
yeah.
those.
Rounded gutters.
The porticos that you have at just the east and the west ends, those are materially the same, there's no contrasting anything there?
Right, it's very simple, and I'd like to think as an extension of the simplicity, it's quiet and elegant and low slow. Not a lot of acrobatics.
You know, just from a point of reference, up on Noel Drive, a few blocks away, there, sort of the dead-end street there is lined with colonials. I think it must have been about 10 years ago, I think we proved a contemporary up there. And one of our charges is sort of, you know, we want to be not too consistent, but not too inconsistent. So I guess that's the question here. I mean, I hear where the architect's coming from. You know, I guess we have to think, knowing what sort of exists there now, how do we feel as a board? Is it, you know, kind of a nice project in terms of how it blends in with the existing neighborhood?
You want this, I think, to blend into the environment more than you do the neighborhood, because it's in a wetland, you kind of want it to blend in to where it's sitting.
Well, we don't have wetlands, don't say that.
Well, the primary, and again, the idea of trying to keep these low and literally under the radar was the first notion out of the box, and then it led us to this craftsman cottage style vocabulary, right? Because we knew we were going to be embracing these lower pitched roofs. But we wanted to bring some crispness to it, and again, some simplicity to lend to some elegance, and that's how we arrived at, you know, a very simple color palette.
I think it would be helpful to see a color rendering of this thing, because the white is simple and it's great, but it's also really kind of wide and big, and this big white
We
thing.
can enlarge that. we can.
Yeah, and with the charcoal on there, that almost looks like it's like Spanish tile. Maybe that's just because I'm sitting so far away.
Well, you know, I should clarify. This lower pitched element is literally this black standing seam roof. So the roofs are, both materials are black.
So I see three elevations on there, or all four elevations on that plan?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. I'm going to defer to the architects on the board here if you feel that, you know, fully drafted elevation of all four sides.
for me, the color palette and the rendering of this is, in the setting that it is, I think would be helpful to see, and, visibility from the street with that material would just give us a better sense. Right now, this is super small, and I don't think that's necessarily quite up to date as far as
we could advance this to a colored state, is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, even the lower one where you've rendered it in sight, to a certain degree, the little inset box, the colored version of that. But yeah, which looks to me like it's the exact same rendering that you just.
It is the same view. What evolved, and again, because I think it's so subtle, what evolved from the first concept sketch to the most recent version is the elevation shifts vertically from unit to unit. And then this element stood prouder in the initial concept, and then we tucked it back in further after getting some site plan comments.
And even just like the turnaround for the fire department, right? Because it looks like at that end of the property, you're showing trees and everything there, that's going to be a big flat.
Well, yes, I mean, this was pre-fire department, and this is post-fire department.
Right, understood. So, but all of that, kind of putting all of that together, I think, making sure that this is.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't know that it's going to offer any profoundness, but any higher level of profoundness, but.
Dave? Okay, so then I think with that, I'd say come back next month with kind of what Seth was spelling out for you guys, and then we can take a look at this.
Anything else I need to come back with?
Is there any way you could show what it's gonna look like from the point of view from the street?
Sightlines.
Like sight line from the street, like what's visible if you're driving by, like what are you gonna see?
Absolutely.
That'd be nice to like get an idea.
It's
The view shed?
summer or winter.
It's fall.
Because obviously you know why I'm asking. If you've been on Google Earth and you look at the summertime views, you drive past this, it's you're not going to see much. But you don't have to take my word for it. We can create that.
Okay. Yeah, the more detail, the better. Yeah, I mean, certainly, we saw a couple samples, maybe, I know you kind of spelled out gutters and all that kind of stuff. Roof shingle, you said GAF is going to be the color?
GAF charcoal.
Charcoal, okay, so they have it on
I
there.
don't know if we've ever seen a gutter sample, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go there.
You want to go and sample?
Somebody might hit me with it. All right, so just have some samples for next month, so we can kind of tactfully pass them around.
So just so I'm clear, what samples do we want me to bring? So I'm not dragging in roof,
a roof shingle and
8-foot section of gutter.
Yeah. I think we have 10-foot sections.
Okay. Just, roof shingle?
Oh, yeah, what about the deck? I don't know if any of the deck sample. You said that the railing is depicted there. What's the
Trex.
Okay.
And I can bring those samples.
Yeah, and whatever you have.
Okay.
I mean, even if it, like the metal railing, even if it's just a cut sheet for that particular.
I'll blow these up.
Yeah, larger scale photo.
You want something for the windows?
Yeah, pretty comfortable just specking out an Anderson, whatever you're specking out.
Well, I'm not bringing in a window, but I can bring a color chip sample of black.
What color is the black?
You can do that too. I get the message.
Okay, great. Thank you, and I guess we'll see you in March.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 65 Main and 16 Brandon were also adjourned. I guess they are still working on their engineering and other things. And 10 Marble also, I guess you guys are working on zoning board. You're on for March?
Yes.
Okay, so you anticipate coming back here at the end of March to further advance the application? All right. New business is 3-20 Secor Road Development. I think we're getting a zoning text amendment request.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert Corky, 11 Lakeview Road, Ossining. Counsel for the applicant Pedro Silva with, I don't need to introduce J.D. Hernandez, the architect for our proposed project. We're here tonight to request a text amendment to the zoning as it affects properties on Secor Road, south of Main Street going west toward the river. That zoning, as you know, currently requires that there be commercial on the first level with a residential allowed above that. We're requesting is that the text amendment would allow that we could have residential on the first floor in this area. I'm sure you know that this area currently is solely a residential area. There is no commercial property on that space. They're all older, abandoned, actually, residential properties. There is only parking allowed on one side going down, and you know that it's an extremely steep slope that really precludes much development that would be applicable to a commercial usage.
Why don't we just toggle back down a little bit so I can see? So this is sort of the concept?
This is the concept so far that we're talking about. Bringing down all different units, residential, 4 stories each unit. So this is where we've been working with the board.
With residential on the first floor?
Yes.
All the way up Secor?
Yes.
Yes.
So to give you a kind of breakdown.
So essentially, this will all be residential?
Yes. That's the
Whereas right now, it would call for retail,
Right.
commercial, office?
Yes. Right. And we did explore different ways to do this, change the map,
Why do we go away from retail on the bottom?
Well, one of the reasons that we had is that this is where all Main Street is steep, but not as steep as the rest of the neighborhood.
Yep.
When you come down Secor Road, this is like over 10% steep, the sidewalk.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons. The other ones is already all residential, as all Main Street brings you down into the post office. Secor Road has it's adjacent to the hillside. It has more residential connotation to it. But the biggest portion was the steepness. Yeah.
So the way that it's written, it will only affect properties that face out to Secor, because you're showing an assemblage of properties that include Main Street as well.
Well, that was, but this one, in this side, it wouldn't require to be, the first floor will be parking.
I
So
see.
it will not require to be residential.
So the parking's gonna be under?
Yeah, this is some conceptual ideas that we've been exploring. This is the parking, the existing parking lot for the village. The idea was to have 3 different levels of parking, utilizing the different entrances or levels that all Main Street has.
That's like an elevate. What do you have a conceptual street view of what that side would look like, or is it?
No, we don't have a 3D dimensional view.
Yeah.
Looking at this, no. We will eventually have that, but
Because I know that that's also steep. It's not as steep as
Right.
Secor.
Right.
But I think part of the zoning here, I understand that where you're pointing to, that's a very steep section of Secor. It's hard to imagine, a shop there. It's, I guess they do it in San Francisco, but you're basically saying that most of that block will never have storefronts or that kind of commercial.
And the Secor side, yes.
Well, yeah, but the other,
The other side you have residential, let's see.
It's bounded by PW, right?
DPW is
I'm saying PW plan, water.
Right,
plan,
right.
I thought there were 1 through 8, but I guess this is PW.
C.
A, B, and C.
Yeah, sorry.
This, the hillside, yeah, you have the waterfront.
This-
You have to- yeah, A, B, and C. This is the hillside.
This section of Secor is sort of idiosyncratic. You only have one side of the street. It's not really meant to have activity on both sides. You have that very steep slope on the other side. I don't think there's even a sidewalk on that side of the street.
No, there's a wall.
A wall.
Not on
So-
the other side, yeah.
Yeah, so they only have the one side. There's limited parking on that side now, and thinking of it from an aspect of parking and using a commercial space and pulling in and out of there, where it's one of the busiest streets going to and from the train, really didn't make a lot of sense that someone would be stopping there for, I don't know exactly what you stop there for, but it's really not a conducive spot. And I think sometimes, you know, you look at something and it hasn't been commercial before, maybe it's not suitable for commercial. We could wish a lot of things. We could wish it's San Francisco and a ferry down the bottom, but there's not. So there has not been any commercial development there at all. And so it's really taking what has been property that's been allowed to really be an eyesore, and coming up with a way of making it an attractive property leading down to the train and coming back from the train. So I think it enhances where everyone's been trying to do with developing that tract of property down toward the train and making it more attractive. Right now, it's really not that way.
One of the other, things like it's talked about in the comprehensive plan and the downtown redevelopment working committee that I was on, we talked a lot about sort of like this experience of someone traveling on foot to the train station and talking about the concepts of like placemaking and the streetscape. And so my concern would be that there is some kind of, like the rendering you showed there, the conceptual rendering you're showing, it looks like entrances and landscaping along that, that it does, but my other concern would be that, you propose something that kind of turns around the entrance or the face of the building the other way, since you have the whole block.
But the lot, they're not true lots, so on the other side, you do have, in the one side, we have, this would be parking, but these, these are independent. And going back, Jeff, to what you were saying before, I believe that, this, lower Main Street or Old Main Street is more conductive because of it's lesser.
Well, there's already businesses.
It's already
in that.
businesses and there's the feeling of it. Seco Road, this side, already has, one side is a retaining wall, 20 feet high, and the other side is been residential or semi-residential all along. There's no history of being a business.
There's another applicant that's proposing 65 Main Street, and there's sort of, how do we keep this harmonious with that? I mean, it's an interesting concept, because I think we're all trying to figure out how to get this pedestrian loop or this sort of trail of interest that'll, connect to some restaurants and get people up to the Main Street and bring them over to what, is being proposed on Brandreth.
Well, 65 Main is a continuation of.
Is this consistent with achieving that overall goal that, Jeff mentioned, this comp plan review is happening, and, is this something that's just, a one-off review for us, or is it something that gets twinned in with the comp plan?
I think it works with it because you're adding people to be utilizing the restaurant at 65. Right now, that's, again, a site that's not been used forever. But now you're adding here is really people who could use the downtown on foot, because they could walk there. And so it's a really viable new population to the downtown that would be, I think, looking for a restaurant. There are several new restaurants, right on Main Street there, and I think this adds to that, because what you're doing is you're going to be increasing foot traffic from these folks either walking to the train. The beauty of it, obviously, is the access to the train. And if you live there, you're going to be walking to the train. And you're also walking to the village. It's really, it really, I think, it highlights and enhances everything that's been planned down there. It's not a one-off.
Going to the connectivity to what 65 Main starts talking about connectivity and bringing everything down to the train station. Again, I believe that that is very, very much part of lower Main Street, Old Main Street. And that's not gonna change, that's gonna be, and then you have the DPW side being as well there too.
Just as, I don't know if this really affects what you're proposing, but the 2009 comp plan proposed creating one-way streets, I believe making it one-way down Main, down the steep part of Main, and then making Secor one-way back, coming back up to create like a one-way loop, and that was never put into action. And of course, we're doing a new comp plan, and we'll, maybe that'll be revisited as an idea, but it was proposed as a potential opportunity. I don't know if that would have, you know, maybe had the opportunity to create more parking, or could have, you know.
You're not gonna get more parking on Secor, you only have one side of the street.
Well,
No,
it's
if
one
it's
way.
one way, if it's one way.
Well,
But that.
no, it's
I
two
believe
way now,
the biggest-
you're not adding
Yeah,
a lane,
yeah.
you're not adding a lane.
Yeah,
You have
no,
two
but I'm thinking
lanes
like you're
with one lane, with one
How does this
parking.
fit into the overarching, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
I think the biggest, for commercial development, the biggest obstacle we see here is, you know, over 10% slope. I mean, to be able to park and to walk into the stores, that's gonna be a challenge.
And you control that, all those parcels now, you said you've assembled them, or
Well, that
what's
is,
the story
let
with that?
let him speak to.
25, 27,
We have
and
4 private.
we have 3 of the
Three.
properties, I think it's 4 lots.
And this other lot, you are what, contract vendee?
No, we have all the properties. We have the properties that we're looking for, that are on JB's plan.
So whatever you're requesting here, you have title to all
Yes.
parcels?
And then there's there's some village properties there.
Well, that would be, we're talking about, when we talked with the village trustees, we talked about 2 aspects of this project, 2 phases. One that really would be much more aggressive and utilizing village parking. This aspect of it really doesn't require that, and it's sort of a first step to get this thing going. And it's really to get it moving because it's been sitting for too long. And there are quite a few issues that are involved in terms of the developer and village property and who uses it, how it gets used, that could tie this up for a very long time, just sorting it out. So our concept was to try to do this part of it first as phase 1 of our development.
So phase 1 is this hatch area, red area, and these are all privately owned lots. Then phase 2 and phase 3, that's when we get involved with, you know,
Right.
later on with village property.
So here's one other thing, a question I have, which is your proposed text amendment written too broadly? Not that it doesn't make sense right into these parcels in the center of Secor Road, but I think the way you have it written, it will go all the way down to the corner. And the way the lots are numbered there, you are going down to lot 42 in your first phase here?
Yes.
Here?
Yeah.
But the way I think you have it written, it would include all, right, I mean, where's the text of your, I saw it up there a second ago.
Yeah, there's only, so again, SPN, which is the Station Plaza North, is there a station, where, I'm looking for Station Plaza South.
There is by Scarborough.
Where, could you scroll to where they have the text, it's set
I
in
think it's
order.
yes, the other.
No, it was in, it's in that,
yeah.
it's in there, it's just, it's in the same one.
Yeah, or
It's way down by Kenny's Cove, Mike.
All the way, okay. all right.
there's this
It's
is-
there, it's in the document we just had.
All right, so what we're doing here is really just limited to that particular zone.
Yes.
Right by the street.
Right, but to Jeff's point, that zone includes properties on both sides of Lower Main,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
the balance of Secord.
yeah, the language that we're
trying
trying
to-
Water Street.
No, keep scrolling down, I know it's, there, right here, is that it?
yeah, that's the line.
Okay, no part of any residential unit shall be located on the ground floor or in a basement except for the parcels along Secor Road and adjacent to PWC District, beginning at the intersection of Secor with Main, which is here,
Yeah,
and
continue
continuing westerly to the intersection of Secor with Barlow Lane, where residential dwelling shall, and where's, can you show where that lower intersection is?
It's
The bottom of the hill, there's a small street
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
It's not seen in the picture.
That turnaround by the train station.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's.
The laundry
Riverview,
mat.
no, Riverview.
So that will include those two lots at the
It's the
bottom.
it's the entire stretch of Secor there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just don't see, like, I think we want to encourage as much commercial.
On that corner.
Oh, yeah, especially
Facing
the
the
corner,
train.
that's like
Yeah,
a.
facing the train.
The
100%.
application, though, doesn't preclude commercial.
Well, I mean, it could be, what, like, I
There's
think
nothing-
the board of trustees are asking us for comments, and
Right, I'm just
I
saying-
think that it could be the, whatever zoning text amendment they pass could be more narrowly drafted.
Okay, that's,
Leave out the bottom part, the bottom piece that abuts Main and
Faces the train.
Carlisle,
station. Yeah.
faces the train, sure.
Yeah, and actually, like, I don't know if, all the way at the top at the intersection of,
that's here.
you know, like, where, there's a restaurant proposed.
Yes.
Right,
There.
but
I
that
don't
will
know
be
that-
affect, no.
I don't know that we would ever,
But that,
I'll give up on,
65 Main is part of a different district.
We're asking for
It will
the
be
other side of the
affected.
street, down, not the 65 Main side.
65 is.
no, what I'm saying is, it's not, Secor's very steep here.
Yeah.
Right,
But the way you've got it drafted, you're,
I
You're
understand, so it should be
what I'm saying is,
more narrow.
what I'm saying is that at the ends of what you're proposing,
Yep.
keep the,
The barbell sort of could both allow
Yeah.
commercial or
yeah,
other
yeah,
opportunities.
and carve the exception where
So-
the street is as steep as, you know, steep and is really prohibitive for,
Right.
commercial development.
Can I ask a question?
We'll get to you in 1 second. We'll finish up with the board and then I'll open it up.
Yeah.
Question for Jeff. The comp plan committee just retained planning consultants. Would they review something like this? Is that something that would be within their purview? I mean, that's kind of, I don't want to do something here and set wheels in motion if,
Yeah, I mean, I
you know,
think.
part of what the comp plan's tasked with is to have their consultant, you know, look at these assembled parcels and come, especially when it's right in the middle of our downtown.
Yeah, I mean, look, really, anything is open in the comp plan process, and it could, I think there's a hope that it will include it'll incorporate, you know, eventual zoning changes, be they minor or major, but, you know, as of right now, we still are going by the 2009 comp plan, and, you know, every project that comes in front of us is still guided, that's our still primary
Right.
planning document. And just because this zoning text amendment were to pass, if the board of trustees were to find it appropriate, however, if it be narrow, it doesn't mean that other changes couldn't be made. If there's, you know, ideas for larger zoning changes that really change the makeup of neighborhoods, that wouldn't preclude.
And we're really referring back to the village board, our
Yeah.
opinion or our thoughts on this particular
Yeah,
text.
can I clarify
Sure.
that? Just,
All right.
I wanted to give the applicant the chance to make their presentation, but, I mean, I'm also not sure how many zoning amendments you guys received, so how familiar you are with the procedure. But obviously, the village board is responsible for approving an application like this, but you're receiving it because they want a report from the planning board on specific items, which are laid out in section 270-59 of the code. So the report from the planning board would ideally, in an application for a text amendment, touch on a few separate issues, including, you know, whether this change would be consistent with the aims and principles in the law as to the particular district concerned, which would be the Station Plaza North District. So I think it would be important for us to also look at, you know, what's required in the Station Plaza North. Does it have any particular aims or, you know, purposes laid out, which it does. Also, what areas, land uses, building, and establishments, in the village will be directly affected by the change, and in what way will they be affected? The direct implications of such change and its effect on other regulations, and whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the comp plan and, if applicable, the LWRP. So that's kind of what you're.
But they'll ultimately, it's a
asking.
legislative change, so they have to
Exactly.
vote up or down.
Okay.
And I'm sure they could modify what's been proposed as well? if
Oh,
they-
yeah. When it gets to that, they'll see your report, and, I mean, I just kind of went through this in another village. Often, they are looking for guidance from the planning board, because you're often the best people who have the most, experience dealing with the regulations on a day-to-day basis. They'll make changes. They'll make changes based on your recommendation, or, depending on what you give them, they won't. And also going towards the comp plan process, they're controlling that too. So they have both of these things in front of them. They're aware of both of those issues. So I think they'll kind of take it all into account.
So question on timing, are we under some clock
Yeah.
once we accept this text change?
So, once you receive this, you have to render a report within 62 days.
Oh.
So basically, you've received it, and, so we refer to
And the date of 12/5/2019, is that when the village,
Hold
by
on.
resolution, referred it to us?
I'm just checking.
No, sure.
This is petition to amend revision, 12/5/2019.
You rendered it. Yeah, of the referral.
So, but I'm assuming that it would be when we receive it, not when the village sends it to us, because, we meet when we meet.
I'll double check that.
Okay.
I mean, it would make sense, because,
Right, because then we'd have to come back here next week and,
Yeah.
well, for the 7th, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And that ain't gonna happen.
yeah, let me, double check. I mean, the language says within 62 days of the referral,
I mean-
but,
Can the applicant just agree to extend that?
yeah, probably.
Could we get, since we're lucky enough to have our village historian here, could we
Yeah, I
get
was
a
gonna
comment?
give Dana,
from the
yes.
public?
Who's like sitting here going,
Dana, you got the floor. I know you know historically what
do
was
you want me to
happening
come
down
up
there.
here?
Sure, come right up and
So in terms of that corner laundromat building, that's not being
No.
touched? Okay, good. That's actually, believe it or not, pretty historic building.
So this is the,
I would not assume that there was never a commercial on the first floor of those buildings, which look like they might date from the 20s. I think I can go, I mean, it doesn't matter, I guess, but I think I could probably go back and look through old village directories and find that there very well might have been storefronts in those. But, you're taking, you've got, right now you've got space between the buildings and you're looking at creating a whole wall of buildings there. So that's gonna, they're much higher as well, right? So,
Four stories.
it's just gonna,
Although the neighbors across the street don't really,
I know.
exist.
No, that's, which is fine, but you've
And
got
that
people
other
down
chain
below,
was on
which,
the other side of the street.
I mean, you've got Water Street, which is, was traditionally an African-American neighborhood. And in fact, I recently found records that when they, in the 80s, after urban renewal, when they started trying to backpedal and actually save things, that Station Plaza was supposed to get a redo and a revamp as part of revitalizing a traditionally African-American neighborhood. But now, I mean, it is an eyesore. They're abandoned buildings. They're not safe. At least they're not, we don't have gaping holes in the sidewalk anymore. But something has to be done. That's all. But I just wanted to make sure that
this building is not part.
is not part of it, and also the one right up next to it is not part of it. That one.
Yeah. We
Okay.
start here.
That's,
Alright.
you're down to lot 42,
Mm-hmm.
so, I don't know, that doesn't,
I think that
Here,
goes to that on the left.
you're saying this is not included in yours, right?
right,
So lot 42 ends right here?
yeah, and how it happened, I was trying to.
And then the lot below there is for station parking. I know because I used to park in there all the
Right,
time.
so-
In fact, I would just like to point out that when you talked about people parking on that stretch, that one time I was trying to make a train, I was going like way too fast down that hill. And I came around the corner and someone was stopped at the curb directly in front of me, in the street. And in order to avoid him, I went like this and crashed into that Sing Sing marble retaining wall. So, it is a pretty dicey little, I'm not saying there ought to be commercial there, because you really don't want people parking there a lot, you know, because it's kind of,
Consideration.
I mean, I can speak from personal experience that, you know, people kind of fly down there trying to make their trains, but the idea of a loop's not bad, because then you're gonna, but, yeah, I don't know, those are just some comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, like I think it's basically appropriate to have residential on the ground floor of the steep area. But my thought would be,
Make sure
maybe it could
that-
be drafted so that it's only lots 40, down to 42 and up to, I don't know what lot at the higher end.
Okay. So
But,
that,
I don't know.
when we submitted the package, the lots are actually highlighted. So maybe as, we were trying to draft a language that kind of, draft a language that it made it just those lots. Because we didn't want it to, because there's another Station Plaza, so we want to make sure that the changes proposed was only for those lots. That's what we said, adjacent to this, between Seco Road and Main, and that was the whole purpose, because we don't want to change all the lots, just these.
The one other thing is the way it's written, I know that there's no parcels, there technically are parcels on the other side of Secor, but they're just higher. So is this written so that it only affects parcels that are on the western side of the?
Yes.
Yes, it's adjacent to the.
Oh, because the PWC.
Yeah,
does-
it's on the one side.
Okay.
Right, it's not, it
Okay.
says B, it's not.
SP,
Yeah.
B.
which is one way down in Sparta Road, which kind of,
I
for
think
some
it's
reason
called-
doesn't make sense, but that's where it wound up.
Right.
For some reason.
At one point, I mean, at the top of the hill, you had the topo lines up there a second ago, but does the grade kind of ease off
Yes.
just a little bit? Because that might also be a way of setting a parameter that, you know, on sections, you define it by
this
lot,
point.
but at least, you know, kind of where the grade is over X%, it'll be.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an interesting scenario, because I think on Croton Avenue, when we had Baker, they tried to do the development under, I think it was NC 1 or 2.
And two.
And we went through that whole iteration of approvals and everything else, and for some reason, the zoning board didn't.
Oh, no, that's what, I'm sorry, we were doing on the MF2, multifamily.
Right, and then it became, right, then they went back to the village board and got the zoning changed to, and I think we made a recommendation at that point, so just kind of linking it to a more recent process. I mean, you know, that's always the challenge here. You guys really push forward to get this, or do you wait and see what the, what the comp plan?
You don't have any views from Hunter, do you?
No.
You have those couple of residential dwellings there, and now you're going 2 stories higher than existing. Just wondering what, if any, impact to those.
Oh, you mean behind the wall? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, on the-
there's-
on-
yeah, there's, I mean, the wall is very,
You have some pictures, that's
You know,
pretty high.
those, right, no, I know it's up higher, but you're also proposing to go higher.
well, you
with the
have
villas.
here, yeah, you have a Hunter
Right.
Street, and then you have, there's the,
Well, further up Secor probably might interfere with a view shed for somebody on Hunter, so I guess you probably want to show us.
well, right, this is
vantage point
Hunter, yeah.
From
I'm
Hunter.
thinking like
Except
the-
even under existing zoning, if they put commercial on the board, that's really, nothing about the height that's permitted would change under this
Hmm.
text amendment. I mean, like, the sightlines would always be
Always be the same.
the same, yeah.
Yes. The concept is to be able to make it usable, because it's really hard to conceptualize that property being used as commercial, just to find stores down. It's such an awkward spot, a difficult spot.
I have a comment, and this is just thinking about, typically when zoning, I think in many instances when a zoning text amendment is done, it's done for an area where perhaps that can't be repeated by anyone else who would be interested in doing that, so that you can kind of control the impacts. Obviously, putting residential on the ground floor is not going to create a big impact, and you need additional residences if you want to generate commercial activity and have commercial on the ground floor and other places. But I wonder, is there another mechanism that would be, other than a text amendment where it could be a conditional use, where it's
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know if that's a good way to get at it, where it can be considered, you know.
Well, you could just say, except, you know, no residential unit shall be located on the ground floor except in the planning board's discretion, or it shall be a conditional use. So that way the planning board has review, so that we're not just changing the zoning and then that's what, that way.
Well, that was going back to that.
Under
We
some
were-
zones now, we have the right to
Yeah.
put conditions on.
No, that's a good.
An application.
So that way, I mean, if other parcels that might be affected by this text amendment come in, then the planning board has the discretion, maybe the neighborhood's changed in a way that would permit commercial on the ground floor, so we.
Well,
give them some flexibility
Yeah.
to see as things evolve, what happens.
right, I mean, even to that point, even if we, once this text amendment is approved, if we come back, we will have to come back to you for a conditional use. Residential units on this zone requires, it's a conditional use. And special,
That's the section that they're amending. This is already a conditional use, they're just proposing to amend the language of the conditional use.
So residential uses are already a conditional use?
They're,
Yes.
currently, they're
Right.
not permitted
It's not permitted on
on
the first
ground
floor.
No, it's not permitted on the ground floor, but it's permitted on floors.
Right,
yes,
above,
and it's a
yeah.
conditional use.
As a conditional use,
Um,
or as of right.
Also,
So residential above the first floor, above the
Yeah,
ground
I think-
floor is permitted as of right
no,
It's a conditional use.
it's a conditional use.
as a conditional use.
I think it's because in these like PW districts, everything is a conditional use, like there's just like.
Yes.
a
Well,
great
this is
level.
this is the
Yeah.
station.
Station Plaza, yeah, but I know some of
Yeah.
these,
I always, I mean, I even forget that, you know, there's always little SP and,
Yeah.
you know, things
what
actually
if it just said,
industrial.
except in the planning board's discretion for parcels along, and then, and that way there'll always be a planning board review of permitting that. Would that?
Yeah, I mean, it's
You could
certainly,
recommend.
yeah, it's something that we will put in the report and refer back to,
Mhm.
you know.
Does that address what you were getting at?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize the residential use above the commercial, above the ground floor was a conditional use too. But I was just thinking about, like, it seems like such a small area to do a zoning text amendment change for. If it were like 50 acres, 25 acres, I don't know.
The term I think they use is spot zoning, so.
So
we
it
wanna be
seems
careful
kind of
about-
like
But it's unique.
selective.
It's
Yeah.
unique in that it's
spot.
It
Yeah.
is.
But
Yeah,
in
I-
understanding the intent and knowing that the goal is to make a higher and better use of places now that may be underutilized.
Mhm. So, in terms of the time frame here, does the applicant, I think it would be appropriate, since this matter has just come before the planning board, for the applicant to consider waiving the timeframe in the code for
You
the,
suggest another timeframe?
well,
62 days from today, right?
Just a 1 month extension, is that what?
yeah,
so
1 month
extension.
extension I think would be
That's fine.
appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like it's gonna go that much longer, but look, there have been instances where it's taken us,
Absolutely.
you know, several months for, you know, the Baker example, you know, where.
And it makes sense to look at it carefully.
Yeah.
We would like you to look at it carefully.
Yeah, I think the board needs probably another month to talk, and then they would need to act, I mean, I would like them to actually make a report, you know, like, so, you know, probably direct me to have, you know, to do up a report to the board of trustees.
And if it's all right with you, I would like to address some of the issues that you raised.
That I raised?
Well, some of the questions you
Oh.
raised that they're going to be looking at.
That were in the code?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, that's okay.
sure.
Thank you.
Now, or?
Now, or.
No, no, no.
Oh,
We have about 2
No,
more
no,
minutes.
Next month.
just checking.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think our agenda's gonna be too crazy next month, based on what I'm seeing right now, I don't think so, unless we get,
We only have one item on the agenda today.
well, I'm hoping, you know, I hope, you know, 65 and 14, 16 get back here next month. All right, so with that said, we'll adjourn it,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. The approved minutes, which is basically just signing. Just one note to the board. Hudson,
Jamie, didn't you send some extensions of, do we have to vote on those?
Next month. Yeah, it was an email.
Oh, that's for next month?
Right. 3, the storage facility on North Island.
Yeah, yeah, I just
Borgata.
wasn't sure if that was on for tonight.
No, because I haven't even distributed the information.
Okay.
Like, they just came in today, so.
I was asked to do a sign off on Hudson Point, and I just, in discussion with Jamie and the staff, I felt that it was a bigger project than sort of the customary single-family house, a window change, a skylight, something, minimal 5–10% change. So I asked Jamie to put on the agenda for next month. It would be VAR. Basically, it's one of the condominium developments in town. So, I mean, I'm guessing they might have several phases of work. So my feeling would be, if you're thinking about doing something, come to us now, and even if it's a phase type thing, let us know in advance so that, the board has an opportunity to look at materials, finishes, and that kind of thing. I didn't want to create a precedent for, another project coming in and say, well, if you did it for Hudson Point, we want, same conditions, so just so everybody knows what's going on. Okay. That said, I guess, old business, new business, otherwise we'll adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
Sure, sure.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye. Good.